Welcome, class. As you know, my name is Mr. Reddick, and today we're going to discuss the autobiography of Malcolm X, as written by Alex Haley. So, to start, we're going to do a quick overview just about the novel in itself, and just talk about the key themes and incidents or occurrences that may have had an impact on the theme itself, and why Malcolm X was the person that he was that we know today. So after talking about the novel as a whole and the key themes, we're going to discuss the background. The background of his journey, his childhood growing up, and how that impacted the man that he was later in his life. After we discuss the background, we're going to look at Malcolm X's journey in itself, and just pretty much all the events that you guys know about and read in the novel, and then kind of tie the things that happened during his journey to his background, and you'll start to see a correlation in that aspect. After we discuss his journey, we're going to look at, I just want to give you guys an opportunity to discuss between yourselves what you would do in his situation. Obviously, we know that Malcolm X had some pretty intense things going on in his life as a child and as an adult. And I just kind of want to give you guys an opportunity to express yourselves and just kind of pick your brains a little to see what you would do in his situation. After we talk about that, I want to talk about how it relates to the events going on today, and just see how it relates to you guys as individuals. So I think that would be interesting as well. And then last, after we talk about the relatability, I kind of just want to wrap up some concluding themes and thoughts, just talk about the events. So without further ado, let's get it started. So to start off with Malcolm X's background, as you guys know, his father was Earl Little, as I mentioned early in the novel, who was a former activist, and he was actually killed by the Ku Klux Klan. Malcolm X's mother, Louise Little, was also a former activist, a Grenadian activist to be specific, and she was actually shipped off to a mental institution because of her traumatic experiences that she had gone through. So we have both of Malcolm X's parents, and we see these things that they went through as individuals, and obviously Malcolm X, as a little child, was affected by this. And I think this kind of led to this disdain and hatred that he had for white people, and it kind of led to, his violent protesting as an adult. So after being split up, he was sent to an orphanage. I think that was in chapter 4. They talked about, his experiences being in an orphanage and things like that. So, Malcolm X, he had it hard. It was very difficult for him. And then lastly, obviously, the struggle kind of had a direct impact on him and led to his destiny as becoming Malcolm X. And before we continue, one thing I do want to say is that this book is left up for interpretation. So if you guys disagree with me about anything I say, you can tell me, and we're going to have a respectful conversation about it, and it kind of lead to, I think it should lead to a great discussion between your classmates. So yeah. So obviously, Malcolm X's journey, he was a leading protester, as we saw throughout the novel, and he was a revolutionary who chose violence as a form of protesting. As a result of this led to a violence form being pushed back against blacks at the time because of what he had done. So after all of these things that Malcolm X was going through at the time, I believe it was chapter 8, he took a trip to Mecca, and he basically realized that all white people weren't evil, right? And so after realizing this, he kind of disconnected himself from the Islamic nation, and they were pretty upset. And Malcolm X kind of realized that it was some white Islamic nation folk who were treating him better than some of his black counterparts were. So that's what kind of led to the disconnect from the Islamic nation. And one thing I love that Alex Haley does throughout this novel is that she keeps it very open for interpretation. So there's a lot of theories as to why Malcolm X died, and if it was the Islamic nation or if it was the white supremacists or things like that. So I kind of want to leave it up to you guys to interpret how he died. So then I want to ask you guys, what would you do in this situation? You live your whole life a certain way, as obviously in the Islamic nation, and then you kind of find out that things weren't the way they were intended or interpreted at first. So I kind of want to leave it up to discussion of what you guys would do differently and what would you do the same if you were in Malcolm X's shoes. So after this discussion, I want to talk about the relatability aspect. Obviously, last May we saw a strong, different forms of protesting for Black Lives Matter. We saw the peaceful protesting, we saw the violent protesting, and I just want to kind of tie it into the novel that we read. And really, one question I want to ask you guys are what similarities and what things are different from the 1960s when Malcolm X was protesting and leaving the Islamic nation compared to 2020 or 2021 as of now. So lastly, some concluding themes. I think it's pretty evident that two wrongs don't make a right. I know it's cliche. I know you guys hear it from your parents, but I think it's pretty evident in this novel, at least, that that's true. Malcolm X chose violence, and he got violence in return, which obviously led to success. And then another thing I want to mention to you guys is the value in seeking the truth. When you're fixated on a certain thing or a certain way of believing something, it kind of clouds your judgment in a way. So I think that's something you guys can take from this novel, is to always seek the truth and kind of understand the other side.